This happened a week ago. I was a new nurse at St. Margaret's Hospital. I chose night shifts because I liked the quiet. But it was never really quiet. The dim lights flickered like they were haunted. The sound of wheels squeaking echoed down the empty corridors. I was getting used to it, or so I thought. I went through my usual routine that first week. I checked on patients, adjusted for drips, and made sure they were comfortable. I made my rounds, listening to the faint beeping of machines. I focused on my work, but the isolation felt suffocating. I always felt a chill as I moved through those long, dark hallways. One night, around 2 a.m., I was filling out some paperwork when I first heard it. It was soft sobbing coming from room 302. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just a patient or a dream. But the next night, it happened again. I heard the same sound, full of sorrow. I walked over, peeking inside. The room was empty. No one was there. I felt uneasy but convinced myself it was just the stress of the night shift. I returned to my duties, forcing the noise out of my head. As the week passed, the sobbing changed. It grew louder, more distinct. If I closed my eyes for a second, I could almost see shadows slipping down the hall. One of my patients, an elderly woman, started talking about cold spots. "They come and go," she said with shaking hands. "I see them in the corner." I nodded, but I felt a shiver run down my spine. A few nights later, I was on my break after finishing my rounds. I stared at the walls, trying to shake off the creeping dread. I heard whispers now, mixing with the sobs. I couldn't tell if they were talking to me or to someone else. When I met another patient, a young man who clutched his blanket. He looked scared. "Do you see the shadows moving?" he asked. I forced a smile, but inside, I was scared out of my mind. There's no one there. Then it happened. I stepped out of room 209, and there, at the end of the hall, I saw a figure. A woman in a white gown stood still. Her hair fell around her face, blocking her features. My heart raced. I felt cold sweat on my back. Couldn't look away. I opened my mouth to speak. "Is anyone there?" The figure didn't move. But then, I heard a chilling whisper. "Help me." My chest tightened. I wanted to scream, but fear locked me in place. I blinked, and just like that, she vanished. I was alone again. I've never stopped thinking about it. The shadows, the sobbing, that figure. Was it all in my head? Or was the hospital hiding something darker? I keep wondering what would happen if I worked another night. What would I find waiting for me? The answers felt closer than ever, yet I knew better than to look for them. I arrived for my shift the next night, and the atmosphere felt different. The air was thick with a tension I had never sensed before. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just my imagination. But as soon as I logged in, I could hear whispers again. They floated through the air as if the walls themselves were murmuring secrets. I filled the time with my routine tasks, forcing myself to focus on the patients who needed me. But every time I passed room 302, the soft sobbing echoed louder in my mind, pulled at my thoughts. My heart raced as I approached the door, and an unsettling urge to explore the mystery gripped me. I knocked hesitantly. "Hello? Is anyone in there?" Silence answered. I took a deep breath and opened the door, but the room was empty, just like before. The only thing there was a chair pulled slightly from the wall. I stepped inside, feeling a chill wash over me. The sobbing felt closer now, but from where? Suddenly, my pager buzzed, snapping me back to reality. It was a call from room 210. I hurried to attend to the patient, but my mind lingered on the haunting echoes. As I walked the quiet hall, I noticed a light flickering at the end. I felt compelled to check it out. As I approached, I saw it wasn't just flickering. The light was barely illuminating a shadow against the wall. I leaned closer, my heart racing again. I could see it more clearly now, a long, dark figure hunched over something on the floor. "Hello?" I called out, but it remained still. I took a step back, unease flooding my senses. Then the whispers started again, and my own breath quickened. It felt like they were coming from inside my head this time. Desperate to escape the grip of fear, I was about to turn away when the figure slowly raised its head. I felt frozen. It was that same woman in white. But now her eyes glistened like pools of darkness, and her mouth moved, mouthing something I couldn't hear. My instincts kicked in. I turned and ran back toward the nurse's station. Whatever that thing was, I didn't want to find out. Shaking, I returned to my duties. The whispers still echoed in my mind, now mixed with a strange, gnawing feeling. I needed to talk to someone. I approached an older nurse, Amy, who had been working night shifts longer than I had. I asked her if she had ever heard anything strange during her shifts. Her face paled at the mention of room 302. You shouldn't be in there alone, she warned. Bad things happen to those who get too curious. My chest tightened. What do you mean? I pressed, shaking off my anxiety. Just be careful. Some stories, they linger. They don't want to be forgotten. Her words hung in the air like a curtain between us, heavy with unspoken truths. I felt dread creep into my bones again. What had I stumbled into? That night, I vowed to never return to room 302 alone. Yet, as I sat in the break room, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I turned sharply, scanning the shadows. Something was there, lurking just out of view. That S when I saw it, a handprint on the glass door, small and childlike. But I was sure there were no children in the hospital. I needed answers, and fast. As I prepared for my next round, a scream pierced the silence, coming from room 210. The scream tore through the quiet night, wrapping around me like a cold grip. My heart raced as I bolted toward room 210, fear clawing at my gut. I reached the door and threw it open, ready to face whatever terror lay inside. The patient, Mrs. Johnson, sat upright in bed, her eyes wide and frantic. They're here, she yelled. They won't stop looking at me. I rushed to her side, grasping her arm to steady her. Who's here? What do you mean? Her breathing was erratic, and her gaze darted around the room, fixating on something I couldn't see. I felt a tremor of panic rise in me. It's okay. You're safe here, I said, trying to sound calm, though my heart pounded in my chest. But just as I began to soothe her, I saw a shadow flickering around the corners of the room, almost playful, but there was nothing enjoyable about it. It moved with a whispering quality, sliding along the walls. I blinked hard, hoping it was just my imagination, a trick of the dim light. But the shadow persisted, creeping closer and closer. Do you see it too? Mrs. Johnson asked, her voice trembling. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. Stay still, I tried to reassure her, even as uncertainty curled inside me. I could feel something sharp in the air, something that made the hair on my arms stand on end. I grabbed the call button for help, but the moment I pressed it, the shadow darted behind the bed, vanishing from sight. A moment later, Amy bustled into the room, her brows furrowed with concern. What's going on? She asked, eyes scanning the space. Before I could respond, Mrs. Johnson shrieked again. Don't let it get me. It's coming for me. What's coming? Amy said, stepping forward. But as she entered the room, her demeanor shifted. The lights flickered above, casting erratic shadows on the walls. It felt like the room itself was alive, vibrating with an energy I couldn't understand. I have to go, I blurted, feeling trapped. I took a step back, my instincts screaming at me to run. But then Amy turned slowly, her face pale and shadowed, and I realized she was staring at something behind me. I spun around, dread curling tight in my stomach. The moment I saw it, a figure, indistinct and shifting, just at my periphery, my breath hitched. It was there again, the woman in white, right outside the door, her dark eyes boring into me. Get out of here, Amy shouted suddenly, the urgency in her voice slicing through my panic. I didn't need another invitation. I bolted from the room, adrenaline surging as I fled down the hallway. I raced to the nurse's station, my mind ablaze with confusion and terror. The whispers swelled, now louder and more insistent, pulsing against the walls around me. I wanted to ask Amy what I had just seen, what was happening, but the fear of the unknown left me paralyzed. Just then, my foot caught something on the floor, and I stumbled. Looking down, I froze. The object was a small, crumpled piece of paper. I picked it up, my hands shaking. When I unfolded it, my breath caught in my throat. It was a drawing of a woman in white, and scrawled underneath were 2 words. Help me. Before I could process it, the lights flickered again, plunging me into darkness. I gripped the paper tighter, my mind racing as I heard the whispers swell once more. Who did the drawing belong to? And what was I supposed to help? My heart sank as I realized I had no choice but to confront the mystery that surrounded me. Someone needed my help. But how deeply was I about to dive into this haunting tale? I stumbled through the hallway, clutching the crumpled paper like it was a life raft in turbulent waters. Shadows danced along the walls, twisting in ways that felt almost deliberate. My heart thudded in my chest, and I fought the urge to look over my shoulder. The whispers grew louder, swirling around me, but I couldn't make out words. It was disorienting, like walking through a thick fog. I pushed myself toward the break room, needing a moment to breathe, to gather my thoughts. I swung the door open, and the stale scent of coffee greeted me, mixing with the tension in the air. As I entered, I glanced around to see if anyone else was there. The room was empty, save for a flickering fluorescent light above and the sparse furniture that looked more institutional than inviting. I leaned against the counter, taking deep breaths, letting the paper slip between my fingers. What did it mean? Who had sketched the drawing? The urgency behind the words helped me echoed in my mind. I felt as if the night was pushing me towards something terrible, and I couldn't just ignore it. I unfolded the paper again, studying the fragile lines of the drawing. The woman in white was unerringly accurate, her face a mask of sorrow. I wondered if Mrs. Johnson had drawn this. She had been the first to see something, the first to scream. But what did it all matter? The shadows outside crept closer, and just then, the break room door creaked open. My stomach twisted. I expected to find Amy or another nurse, someone to confide in. Instead, it was one of the night doctors, Dr. Harris, his expression unreadable. "Everything okay?" he asked, a hint of concern in his voice. "Not really," I replied, my words tumbling out. I shoved the paper into my scrubs pocket, not wanting him to see it just yet. "Mrs. Johnson," she was screaming. I saw something, a shadow, and then Dr. Harris raised an eyebrow. "You need to be careful. The night shift plays tricks on your mind." I opened my mouth to argue, but he waved his hand dismissively. "I've seen patients behave strangely. It's common in here." But my words faltered. What if it was just the night shift? What if I was imagining everything? No, I had drawn from the shadows myself. I had felt that energy buzzing in the room. Before I could offer more, he said, "Keep an eye on Mrs. Johnson. I'll check on her shortly." Then he walked out, leaving me alone with my anxiety and the growing darkness around me. Suddenly, the lights flickered again. My heart raced as I glanced around the room, feeling the temperature drop. I could hear the whispers now, clearer, muffled but closer than before. I caught a glimpse of something in the corner of my eye, a figure shifting just beyond the doorframe. Then everything went dark. Panic seized me. My breath caught, ringing in the silence like a warning. I fumbled for my phone, but I couldn't see through the blackness. The whispers grew louder, woven into the fabric of the dark. "Help me." The words echoed around me, swallowing my rational thoughts whole. I realized then, whatever was haunting this hospital was not finished with me yet. I wasn't just a passive observer. I was tangled in a web of shadows, and they were reaching out for me. I had to find a light, a way out. I couldn't stay in the dark. I needed to move. I pushed myself off the counter, my heart racing in my throat. My phone, my only source of light, was useless in my pocket. I stumbled toward the door, focusing on the cold tiles beneath my feet. I knew I had to get out of the break room. I reached the door and turned the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic coursed through me. Was I locked in? I twisted it again, pulling with all my strength. Nothing. I was trapped. The whispers intensified, almost mocking me now. I felt sweat beading on my forehead. I pressed my back against the door, trying to catch my breath. Then I remembered there was another way out, a small window in the supply closet. I took a step back from the door. The darkness pressed in, heavy and suffocating. Every inch of the room felt alive. I had to fight against the fear. I turned and made my way to the closet, feeling along the walls to navigate. Any moment, a shadow could reach out to me, but I didn't stop. I could hear the scratching of my shoes against the linoleum. I came across the door, feeling for the handle. I yanked it open, revealing the closet-esque cramped space, lined with stacked boxes and medical supplies. I lunged for the back wall, using it as a guide. My fingers grazed the edges of the shelves, searching. Then I found the slender shape of the window. I pushed aside a few boxes and clambered up, stretching toward the opening. The space was tight, but I could hear the chaos outside. It felt safer than the darkness surrounding me. I took a deep breath, pushing myself up, but just as I was about to climb out, something tugged at my leg. It was a small, cold hand, fingernails digging into my ankle. I screamed. I twisted around, and the shadows coalesced, forming a figure on the floor. It was a girl, her face obscured by strands of dark hair. She looked up at me, her eyes wide and pleading. "Help me," she whispered, her voice soaked with desperation. I jerked my foot free, stumbling back toward the window. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to know what she was. But the way she looked at me kept me frozen. I was caught between wanting to flee and wanting to help. "Please," she cried, almost sounding human. But the shadows around her shifted and writhed like smoke. The air grew colder. I felt like I was suffocating. Then, just as abruptly, she vanished. The darkness receded slightly, and I caught a glimpse of the doorway. The break room was becoming more visible, the looming shadows retreating just enough for me to see the flickering light. In that moment, I made a decision. I scrambled toward the door, heart pounding in my ears, and pushed it open with all my strength. The whispers faded into a distant murmur, but I knew they'd be back. Whatever was here, it wouldn't let me go. I stepped into the hall, adrenaline surging through my veins. I had to find Mrs. Johnson. I had to know what was going on. But then I heard it again, softer this time but unmistakable. "Help me." And that S when I saw it. What I saw made my heart drop. In the flickering hallway light, a mirror on the wall reflected not just my pale face, but also the dark figure of the girl standing behind me. My breath caught in my throat, and I spun around, but there was nothing but the shadows pooling on the floor. The air felt thick, and my hands trembled. Had I imagined her? Had it been a trick of the light? I needed to calm down. I reminded myself that I had to find Mrs. Johnson. I took a hesitant step forward, scanning the dim hall for any sign of her. As I approached the nurse's station, I noticed the normally bustling area was empty. The chairs sat abandoned, and the faint beeping of machines echoed ominously in the background. I felt a prickle of unease crawl up my spine. "Hello?" I called out, but the sound left my lips like a whisper in the wind. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, casting long shadows that danced against the walls. I pressed my back against the counter, heart racing. I could still hear her voice help me. It rang in my ears, mingling with the buzzing lights. Then I noticed something at the edge of the desk. A small, metallic object lay askew on the floor, Mrs. Johnson's ID badge. My stomach twisted. If she had been here, where was she now? I bent down to pick it up, but froze as I felt a chill sweep through the room. The whispers swelled, discordant and more menacing than before. I straightened up, clutching the badge tightly in my hand. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement, a flicker in the doorway leading to the patient wing. I turned, my breath quickening as I saw her again. The girl stood at the end of the corridor, her silhouette illuminated by the dim light. This time, her expression was darker, more frantic. "Help me, please," her voice pleaded, echoing hauntingly through the stillness. Without thinking, I ran toward her, but as I approached, she vanished, leaving behind only a chill in the air. I stumbled, skidding to a stop. "Wait, where are you?" I shouted, voice trembling. Then a distant cry echoed from the patient rooms. I glanced back. The door to the nearest room cracked open. Hesitantly, I moved toward the sound, my heart pounding in my chest. What if something was happening? What if that girl wasn't the only one who needed help? As I stepped into the room, a feeling of dread washed over me. A hospital bed sat empty, the sheets rumpled and soaked through like something had happened in a hurry. I scanned the room, searching for clues, when suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. I whipped around, panic flooding my senses. The room dimmed unexpectedly, and I could only see my reflection in a large, dust-covered mirror. Then I heard it again, a voice soft and sinister right behind me. "You shouldn't have come here." I spun around, but once again I was alone. There was no one there. My pulse raced as I stared into the darkness behind me. I needed to escape, but the chilling sensation settled back, clawing at me. How many others were trapped in this place, lost like me? I stumbled back towards the door, panicked breaths escaping my lips. The air felt heavier, thick with an invisible weight. I reached for the handle, but it wouldn't budge. I pushed and pulled, my heart racing faster, frustration mixing with fear. "Let me out," I shouted, ready to scream again until my throat was raw. Just then, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into darkness before illuminating again, casting eerie shapes. I could see my reflection again, but now the girl stood beside me in the glass. I turned quickly, but she was gone. A cold sweat dripped down my back. I looked back at the mirror, and there she was again, her wide eyes filled with desperation. "Help me," she mouthed silently. Terror gripped me, and I shifted my gaze to the door. I needed to escape, I needed out of this room. I banged on the door, screaming for anyone to come. The sound echoed, swallowed by the silence outside. I stepped away from the door and back toward the mirror. The girl was still there, just as before. Could she see me? Was she trapped just like I was? I pressed my palms against the cold glass, and for a moment, the world faded around me as I focused on her. "What do you want?" I whispered, desperate for answers. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the hallway, snapping me back to my reality. The door jolted, rattling with a force that sent shivers through me. I grabbed the handle again, twisting with all my strength. Finally, it gave in, swinging open and spilling me out into the corridor. I darted into the hallway, breathless and disoriented. The flickering lights created a maze of shadows. Every corner felt like it concealed something lurking. I turned to where I saw the girl before, but she was gone. I needed to keep moving. The screeching of metal drew my attention to the nearby nurse's station. I rushed over, desperate for a source of comfort, only to find it just as empty as before. But this time, I spotted something shiny on the floor, a small key. My heart raced. Maybe it was the way out. I picked it up and pocketed it, glancing around as I tried to breathe. The cries echoed again, distant and chilling, urging me to find their source. Driven by an unknown courage, I headed deeper into the hallway toward the sound, praying I wasn't too late. Suddenly, I felt a cold breeze brushing against my neck. I turned sharply, but there was no one there. I shook my head, willing myself to stay focused. The voices grew louder, a cacophony of cries reaching a peak. Panic surged anew. I was close. I reached a door marked with peeling paint, the noise emanating from within. I grasped the key tightly, my heart hammering as I hesitated just for the briefest second. Was this the moment to confront whatever lay waiting behind the door? As if sensing my fear, the whispers intensified. "Help me," they cried, an urgent plea that consumed my thoughts. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. And then, I turned the key and stepped inside, ready to face whatever awaited me. The room was dark, lit only by the flickering bulb overhead. It felt different from the last. A chill crawled up my spine as I stepped inside, scanning the space for any sign of what might be waiting. The cries had stopped, leaving a heavy silence that felt more menacing than the wails had. I took a cautious step forward. The reflection in the glass door mirrored my unease, reinforcing the weight of the empty space around me. Shadows danced erratically at the edges of my vision, but I forced myself to look deeper into the room. There were rows of empty beds, sheets pulled tightly as if untouched for years. The air was stale, carrying the faint smell of antiseptic mixed with something metallic. It was unsettling. I stepped further inside, searching for the source of the cries. "Hello?" I called out, my voice breaking the oppressive silence. No answer came. As I moved deeper, my foot caught on something soft. I looked down to find a stuffed animal, a worn-out teddy bear covered in dust. My heart sank slightly. It felt out of place, too innocent for this room. I picked it up, brushing off the dust, wondering if it belonged to the girl I'd seen. Suddenly, a door slammed shut behind me, making me jump. I whipped around, instinctively clutching the teddy bear. The hallway was dark again, the light from earlier fading out. Panic shot through me. I had to get out. I rushed back toward the door I had entered through, only to find it wouldn't budge. Frantically, I pulled on the handle. Felt like it was welded shut. The walls seemed to close in around me, and I could feel my breath coming in short gasps. "Help me," a whisper echoed through the room, chilling me to the core. The voice was soft yet insistent. It came from the far side of the room, near a window draped in heavy curtains. With shaky hands, I dropped the teddy bear and pressed myself against the wall, inching toward the source of the voice. Stepping carefully, I felt as if the floor might give way with each movement. I reached the window and pulled the curtain aside, heart racing. But there was nothing there, just darkness thick and empty. I leaned back, breathing hard, feeling dread swirl inside me. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted movement near the beds. I squinted into the half-light, instincts screaming at me to run. That's when I saw it. A figure crouched beside one of the beds, the outline of a child's silhouette barely visible. My heart stopped. The girl from the mirror, was she real? The shadow turned towards me, and I stumbled back, fear coursing through my veins. "Help me," she whispered again, her voice barely more than a breath. Before I could react, the lights flickered once more, plunging the room into full darkness. I felt something cold brush against my arm. "Stay away," I shouted, stepping back, but I could feel my feet giving in to the darkness. Then everything went quiet as I lost my footing and fell to the floor. Alone and vulnerable, I braced myself for whatever would come next. I lay there, the hard floor pressing against me, heart racing, panic setting in. I could hardly tell up from down in the suffocating darkness. There was no sound, no light at all. I pushed myself up, crawling backward, desperate to escape whatever shadow lingered just beyond my reach. Just as I thought I was alone again, the whisper returned, but now it seemed closer, almost right next to me. "Help me." The plea was more urgent, laced with a desperation that struck a chord deep within me. I felt frozen, unable to move, paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. Then the lights flashed back on, harsh and blinding. I shielded my eyes, blinking quickly to adjust. The room looked the same. The bed sat silently, but now I noticed something bizarre. The teddy bear I had dropped was back on the bed I had found it on. It was as if it had never left. My heartbeat quickened at the sight. How was that possible? Out of the corner of my eye, I saw the girl again, standing at the foot of one of the beds. Her expression was more pronounced now, a mix of fear and longing. I wanted to ask her what she needed. Instead, I brought my hands up, trying to show her I meant no harm. "Are you lost?" I managed to croak out, desperate for an answer. "Help me," she repeated, her voice barely breaking through the awkward atmosphere. She pointed toward the corner of the room. Felt like a challenge to even follow her gaze. When I finally forced myself to look, I saw a large dark cupboard, its doors slightly ajar. Something told me to run, to get as far away from here as possible. But the girl's pleading eyes trapped me. I took a cautious step towards the cupboard, each movement heavier than the last. The air felt thick, almost suffocating. As I approached it, I gripped the handle, hesitating. The sudden urge to turn back grew stronger, as if something dark lingered behind the door. Yet, curiosity tugged at me to know what lay within. Taking a deep breath, I yanked the door open. Inside, sunlight flooded my senses, blinding me momentarily. I blinked away the haze and stepped through, finding myself in a narrow hallway. The walls painted a sickly green. The air smelled faintly of mildew, and I could hear faint shuffles echoing from the end of the corridor. "Help me," the girl's voice echoed from somewhere behind me, now just as faint. I whipped around, but the room I had just been in was gone, replaced by nothing but brick walls. Panic gripped me. I was trapped in a maze of silence, lost in this place that offered no solace. The only thing guiding me was the girl's voice, still faint but close enough to hear, urging me onward. I felt the weight of her expectation pulling me, and I began to walk. "Wait," I called out, realizing I had no idea where I was going or what awaited me. But the soft whispers echoed with every step, growing louder, more insistent. As I turned a corner, I suddenly stopped. There, at the end of the hallway, was a mirror reflecting the dim flicker of an old light bulb. I approached it slowly, dread mounting as my own reflection distorted into the shadows behind me. And then it hit me, I was not alone. Someone or something loomed behind me, ready to pounce. I could feel its presence looming just out of sight, making my skin crawl. The girl's voice faded into a chilling silence. I turned, fear surging within. What was waiting for me in the shadows? I steadied myself, heart pounding, my breath quickening as I sensed the darkness coiling behind me. Time seemed to stretch as I turned back toward the mirror, desperately searching for a sign of the girl, but all I saw was my fearful reflection trembling against the glass. "Help me!" The voice was closer now, echoing through the corridor, layered with a sorrow that felt suffocating. I swallowed hard, torn between the instinct to run and the necessity to find her, this lost child who beckoned me from the shadows. Courage surged within me as I faced the mirror once more. I had always believed in facing fears, but I never envisioned that belief would lead me to something like this. I stepped away from the reflection, ready to move toward the source of the voice, but as I did, another voice joined the chorus, a soft, sinister whisper that sent chills racing down my spine. "Stay with us." I recoiled at the sound, dread consuming me. What was I stepping into? I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see the looming figure I sensed earlier, but the corridor remained empty, silent as a tomb. My heart raced. I didn't want to linger, but I felt a strange compulsion to push forward. "Help me," the girl echoed again, softer, more fragile now, as if she were fading. If I didn't act quickly, I feared I'd lose her for good. I followed the call deeper into the hallway, feeling the weight of something unseen trailing just outside my peripheral vision. Each step echoed against the walls. Shadows flickered at the corners of my vision, teasing me with glimpses of laughter and cries of children. I gripped the key tightly, my only anchor as I descended further into the unknown. The whispers began to morph into laughter, but it was jarring and wrong, a mocking sound that twisted everything I believed was innocent. I reached a door, heavy and aged, with the splintered wood framing a small window. I peered inside, my breath catching in my throat. The room was filled with toys, dolls, stuffed animals, and an old rocking horse that creaked silently in the corner. But the atmosphere felt suffocating and wrong, the very essence of the room oozing despair. "Help me this time." The voice was different, echoing from the corners of my mind, as if the room itself was speaking to me. Whatever remnants of joy these toys once held were now shrouded in grief and loss. A sense of urgency propelled me forward. I pushed the door open, the creaking sound echoing loudly like a warning bell. Inside, the shadows hugged the walls close, twisting into figures that seemed to move just beyond sight. I closed my eyes for a moment, steadying my nerves, then forced myself to look around. The girl stood there, at the far end of the room, her gaze fixed on a dark corner. "Please," she whispered again, her voice dripping with desperation. "Help me." I took a step toward her, longing to grasp her hand and pull her from this cursed place. But something snapped. The shadows shifted violently, and I could feel their eyes watching me. 1,000 presences drumming like a collective heartbeat that pulsed with anger and sadness. The girl's expression twisted, revealing fear instead of hope. "They don't want you here," she cried, her voice compounding my dread. Suddenly, the room erupted with chilling laughter, a cacophony of ghostly voices. Shrieks of laughter mingled with sobbing that echoed through the air. I felt the walls closing in, the darkness swirling, hungry and clamoring. "No!" I shouted, forcing myself to step back from the encroaching shadows. "I won't leave you." I turned toward the girl just as the entire atmosphere shifted. The shadows surged forth, curling around her as she began to fade. My heart raced, a visceral desperation coursing through me. "Stay. I can help," I called out, reaching forward, but she was sliding away, retreating into the dark abyss. I could barely see her smile, a flicker of hope disappearing into darkness. "Please," her voice weighed heavily in the air, lingering in my mind like a distant echo that I could scarcely comprehend. The shadows advanced, clawing further toward me, drowning out everything until all that remained was chaos. In a sudden fit of determination, I grabbed the teddy bear from my pocket and hurled it into the darkness towards her. "Take it. It belonged to you." The moment the bear crossed the threshold into shadow, a blast of wind howled through the room, uprooting dust and debris. The whispers crescendoed to a fevered pitch, and for a moment, everything froze: the laughter, the cries, the darkness. It all came to a halt as light flickered, crystallizing in that single moment. And then silence. My vision blurred as I blinked away the despair that clung to me. When the air cleared, I found the room still, the toys silently watching, but there was no sign of her. The shadows hung around the edges, lurking, but not advancing, the girl's desperate echo still resonating within my heart. Without thinking, I turned toward the door, ready to sprint back into the hallway. I pushed through the door and slammed it shut behind me, shaking and breathless, my heart racing. But I could still hear them: the whispers, the haunting laughter. The words helped me, hanging in the air as I raced down the corridor. I didn't look back, fear carrying me forward as I navigated through the maze of the hospital. I fled into the expanse of darkness that awaited me, the specter of my experience gripping tightly, leaving me in a place of dread. As I stumbled into the nurse's station, I thought of the girl's haunting eyes and unfulfilled plea. The lights flickered again, shadows clawing at my sanity, grappling with the thoughts of what I had witnessed. I don't know if I found her or lost her, but I knew one thing: whatever lingered in St. Margaret's Hospital would continue to echo, waiting for someone to help. I glanced at the hallway one last time, unease gnawing at my gut. Perhaps I had escaped, but in truth, it felt like I was still tethered to that dark place, a thread stretching between two worlds, forever lingering.